Why did the chief priests send in spies to question Jesus about taxes? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse by verse study of the book of Luke on walking through the Bible. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Luke chapter 20. We're going to be reading from verses 20 to 26. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Luke chapter 20, beginning of verse 20. So they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be righteous, that they might seize on his words in order to deliver him to the power and the authority of the governor. Then they asked him, saying, Teacher, we know that you say and teach rightly, and you do not show personal favoritism, but teach the way of God in truth. Is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But he perceived their craftiness and said to them, Why do you test me? Show me a denarius. Whose image and inscription does it have? They answered and said, Caesar's. And he said to them, Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. But they could not catch him in his words in the presence of the people. And they marveled at his answer and kept silent. In this context, we're dealing with the events of Tuesday of the week that Jesus was crucified. Jesus had told the parable of the vineyard, a parable that the chief priests and scribes knew that Jesus was aiming at their disobedience. They wanted to kill him, but because the crowds considered Jesus a great prophet, they could not. Instead, what they sought to do was discredit him among the people, so then either the people would allow them to arrest Jesus, or Jesus would say something against Rome, leaving them no choice but to have Jesus arrested. So because the chief priests knew Jesus' attitudes towards them, they sent in spies who pretended to be righteous to ask him a question so as to trip Jesus up in his words. Luke is the only gospel that gives us this detail, but make no mistake, the question comes from the chief priests and scribes. And what was the question about? It was about taxes. When it comes to taxes, everybody hates to pay them. Either we think the government is taking more money than they need, or we don't approve of what the government spends our tax money on. So we don't want to encourage the government to spend money that way. However, taxes are legal, and God, in places like Romans 13 verse 7, commands his followers to pay all of the taxes that the government demands. In Palestine of Jesus' day, the Jews hated paying their taxes because it went to a foreign Gentile nation, Rome. Now, even if this wasn't the case, I'm sure the Jews would have hated paying their taxes, just as we find in Rehoboam's day in 1 Kings 12. But the fact that the Jews had to pay taxes to Rome formed the basis of the question, which was, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? The reason that they thought they would catch Jesus in his words here was because if Jesus said that it was lawful to pay taxes to Caesar, they could turn to the people and say that he was a Rome lover, for again, the Jews despised the Romans and hated paying taxes to them. If, however, he said that it wasn't lawful, they could turn to the Romans and say that Jesus was leading a tax revolt, something that would cause Jesus to be arrested and probably executed. Either way, they thought they would stop Jesus from teaching and would be able to arrest him. Jesus, though, was the Son of God, and as such knew their hearts. So he knew their wickedness and called them out for their hypocrisy in testing him in this way. In answering their question, he asked them for a coin, a denarius, that would be paid in taxes. He asked them whose image and inscription was on it. They answered, Caesar's. This meant that they resided in the Roman Empire, and as such, Rome was their government and Caesar was their ruler. And so they were to obey their government and pay any taxes that it required. But the Pharisees had also been neglecting to follow God's law completely because they made up traditions to get around it. So just as they owed Caesar what was due Caesar, they owed God what was due God. As we said earlier, the same is true of us today. No matter what country we live in, we are to pay all of the taxes owed to our government. Now, if our government gives us legal ways of reducing our tax burden, we can avail ourselves of those, but we aren't to be tax cheats. But what if the government spends my tax money on sinful things? Once we pay our taxes, the money is no longer ours, and those in the government will be held responsible should they spend it on sinful things. Here, and in Romans 13, Christians are reminded to obey their government and pay their taxes. So if we want to be followers of God, that's what we must do. In the same vein, we should give to God what is due him as well. This would include our time, our worship, our contribution to the local church, our spiritual sacrifices, our honor and devotion, our love, and our life. Being a Christian is a 24-hour-a-day, 365-day-a-year thing. There is nothing that is righteous that we shouldn't be willing to do in order to faithfully serve God. When Jesus gave the response that he did, they marveled at what he had said and knew that they didn't catch him in his words. They thus remained silent, allowing the Sadducees to take their turn, a story that we will cover, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Luke chapter 20, verses 27 to 40, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.